right, everybody, welcome to the Grab the Map podcast. This is John Crutchfield. Remember, this is where we don't just look at it, we grab the map. We're on YouTube and we're on, I believe we're on all places you can get podcasts. And this morning, I'm really excited to jump right in and talk to you with David Oles. We've been trying over the last few weeks to bring in some big thinkers, and I'm so excited because every now and then I get to talk to somebody who's a big thinker. And that's going to definitely improve my business, my network, but hopefully add value to you as well. Hey, David, you there?
I'm here, man. Thank you so much for having me on, John. I've been really looking forward to this.
Man, I'm glad that you're here. Man, big time investor out of Chattanooga, Tennessee. And you're probably going to say you're not big time, aren't you?
I'm not big time, man. I tell you, man, I tell this to people all the time, no matter where you're at in the life cycle of being an investor, if you haven't done one deal, you just want to be the guy who's done one. If you've done one, want to be the guy who does 5 a month. If you're the guy that does 15 or 20 like us, you're the guy that wants to be, doing 40 a month. So yeah, I mean, hopefully everybody's looking up and trying to grow. And that's just how we approach it.
Yeah, humble. I can tell from our conversation before we started the chat today. And I love it. I love it. You're constantly thinking forward. But also constantly staying humble. So why don't you just jump right in and tell us a little bit about yourself, how you got into real estate investing, a little introduction here.
Sure. Probably not that special of a story. I grew up in Boston. I actually went to UMass and got a degree in criminal justice, which I thought at the time I would do private, like security, loss prevention was sort of big at the time. And I worked my way through college in a retail store. And by the time I graduated, I was making more, in retail as a manager than I would have ever with my degree. So I basically have a worthless degree. The only time it came in handy was down the road when I had some tenants. So dealing with them sometimes. But like 2 recessions ago, in the early 90s, my dad was in the computer industry. He lost his job, so he moved to Florida, and I graduated college, so I went down there with them and got another job working in this hardware store, like a hardware chain. Sort of, they're out of business now, but they were kind of like between an Ace Hardware and a Home Depot, something like that. So, but I always grew up like with my dad fixing houses and doing that type of stuff. And when my wife and I got married in 2002, we bought our first house. And John, I went to closing, and I come out of closing and asked the realtor, like, how did we buy that house from Wells Fargo? I didn't really understand it. This is in 2002. And she's like, oh, well, that was a foreclosure. So the bank took it back and I sold it to you. I'm like, oh, that's kind of interesting. And it kind of was always in the back of my mind, and I didn't pay a lot of attention to it. But because I grew up fixing houses and I worked in, for this hardware company and eventually for a company like 84 Lumber, I was sort of around people fixing houses and doing those types of things. We bought this house and we did, simple stuff. We took out the carpet, put in some laminate, painted, swapped out like a slider for a French door, changed some baseboards and moldings, and sold it 2 years later and made like $53,000.
Okay. And
my realtor told me, she said, hey, since you've lived in this house for 2 years, that's tax-free money. You don't have to pay taxes on it.
Yeah.
Dude, I was like, wait a second. What? What? Are you telling me like this money just goes right in my pocket and I don't have to pay any taxes on it? And she's like, no, it's like a homestead thing or something. And I'm like, oh man, that's freaking great. And the reason I was selling the house was to move closer to my job. So I thought to myself and talked to my wife, I'm like, hey, we could do this again. My wife, she's like crazy, always on board with whatever shenanigans we've got going on. So we bought a bigger house. Like this was a house we bought for like 97, sold for 53 or something. Mm-hmm. So the next one, I'm like, let's buy a little bit bigger one because I'm thinking bigger house, bigger money. And we bought the ugliest house in a beautiful neighborhood, which is perfect, right? I got lucky. So I bought this house for like 178, I think, and sold it 2.5 years later for 300,000.
Yeah.
You know what that meant. And, and I did all the work myself. So yeah, we made that money and, I had sweat equity in it and all that stuff. And I'm like, wow. Okay. So I'm like, at this point, something in my head clicks like, okay, you've got to figure this out. So short story, like a lot of people, somehow I ran into Rich Dad, Poor Dad and read that book. And You know, at the end, he's like, you got to find a RIA. So I found the RIA in Central Florida, and just, you know, as a new person, just really immersed myself in everything that they had to offer with classes and seminars and boot camps and mentoring and coaching and all that kind of stuff. But funny story, people don't believe it now when I tell them, they think I'm full of it. But when I went to the RIA meeting the first time, I drove all the way down to Orlando. It was about a 40-minute drive, and it was held at this big theater. And dude, I pulled into the parking lot, and there were all the, like, it's the third biggest RIA in the country. And there's cars everywhere. We buy houses, hard money, soft money, inspections, all this stuff. And dude, I was afraid to go in, right? Because I was new and I was intimidated. And like, I drove through the parking lot and went home and told my wife, oh, I just couldn't find it. So I mean, you know, if anybody's out there that's been afraid to go into their first meeting or something like that, believe me, I've been there. I understand. I'm incredibly introverted. I don't like those kinds. I like being there, but the thought of going to something, or even now a conference or something, you know, 3 weeks out, it seems like a great idea, but 2 days before, I start getting all this anxiety. But anyways, you know, I fought through that, and it was one of the best decisions I made, because I learned just so much about real estate. And so this was in Central Florida in like 4, 5, and 6, 2004, 5, and 6. And it was almost like it is now. I mean, it was the Wild West of investing. And so that's kind of how we got our start. We got our start buying, fixing, flipping, and reselling. And then like the world came to an end. You know, it wasn't COVID, but the recession in 2000, late 2008, 9, 10. And, you know, we knew we had to get out of there. So we started, you know, again, we were going to some boot camps and learning about different markets and emerging markets. And we realized Chattanooga was, it never really had taken that dip like Florida took. Like Florida took a, you know, 30, 40% drop almost overnight. Chattanooga had a maybe 8 or 10% drop from looking at home prices. And then, you know, it was a very good, stable market. There were lots of different industries here. So we decided to move to Chattanooga. We sold our house, like literally sold everything. And we probably had $5,000 between us by the time we were all said and done. And my wife and I and my brother, we moved to Chattanooga. We knew one person, we knew a realtor. And, you know, we had kind of been going back and forth, and had bought a duplex from a seller. We took over their mortgage. So we did that, but we got up here, and our plan was we were going to buy duplexes and multifamilies, right? Because that's what everybody wants to buy. You know, all investors are just playing Monopoly. Like every single one that you talk to, everybody's trying to go from duplex to quad to 10plex, 10 to, you know, we all want to have apartment complexes. So
at this point, are you a full-time real estate investor at that point when you moved to Chattanooga?
Yes and no. So I did get a transfer with my job with 84 Lumber to be an outside salesman. So basically, John, what I would do is I would roll into the office at about 6:30 in the morning, 7 o'clock, and I would do some paperwork and look like I was working. And then I would say, I'm going out to go talk to, you know, contractors. You know, Again, it was a recession, so nobody was really building. And basically what I was doing is I was going out and driving for dollars and talking to people and looking at properties that were on the MLS.
Being a horrible employee.
I tell you, man, I was the worst. And then at like 3:30, I'd go back to the office with my stack of stuff and say, yeah, you know, and I mean, I did legitimately go stop and talk to some people, but, you know, as I was going to see this builder, you know, that I maybe made an appointment with, you know, I'm driving for dollars, writing down addresses and doing all those types of things. So, so yes and no. And I think they kept me on for about 2.5 months and before they laid me off. But yeah, it was literally, you know, the burn the boats thing where we're going to the city, and we knew we were coming here for real estate, and we were going to make it work. And, you know, people sometimes ask like, well, how were you successful? I'm like, well, we were successful because we were willing to do what nobody else would do. We were willing to work freaking hard. You know, this was 10, 15 years ago. And I tell people, you know, I'm like that old guy, like we walked uphill in snow both ways to school. Like there was no SMS blasting. There was no ringless voicemails. There was pay-per-click. Like none of that stuff really existed. It was all in its infancy. Well, we had a couple things. We sent postcards. We did driving for dollars, and you could door knock. Like that was what you did, right? So, and bayonet signs. So, you know, but we were fastidious about doing those things. Like we were driven. I tell people we were too stupid to quit. So like every Friday night, we go out and we put out 100 bandit signs every single Friday night for 2 years. Like anybody who's put out 100 bandit signs knows that's a lot of work. Even with 2 or 3 people jumping in and out of the car, it takes you 3 to 4 hours, right? Depending upon what the weather is. So, we do that at like 10 o'clock at night, every single Friday night. During the day, we're driving for dollars. Like I'm coming home and I'm giving my wife this list and she's handwriting yellow letters or sending postcards or doing whatever. We're on every webinar we could possibly be on. We are the perfect picture of people who started with absolutely nothing. And we just worked really hard. Everything in life is like time or money, right? You've got one of those two things. We had time and we had zero money.
Yeah, so I think a lot of our audience will resonate with that. A lot of the people listening to this podcast are just trying to get started. Maybe they have a little money, maybe they don't, but they need to hear that, right? That they either have time or they have money, or maybe they've got a little experience. You did have a little bit of experience, like kind of growing up around construction and home remodeling, home building, that kind of thing. So you were able to partner up with, in this case, your wife, it sounds like, and you all like just jump all in and burn the boats. So that's pretty cool. I'm hearing all kinds of things that I resonate here with. And for those people that are listening, I want to go back to some things he's saying, right? He says he's an introvert, right? He's quiet. He doesn't like settings like this, but he's on this podcast right now. He's actually a nationally renowned speaker. He gets invited to speak, and he's doing that, right? He's an introvert who's doing extroverted behaviors. He talked about his first RIA meeting where he drove through and didn't even go in because he was a little bit intimidated. And how a couple of days, before a conference, he's like, why did I sign up for this? That's so me, David. That's me.
Yeah.
Just like, man, it was a great idea when I said, I know I need to do this, get me outside of my comfort zone, be around some big thinkers, be around people that are doing big things. But now I got to go do it and be uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And hearing you say that is very reassuring. Mm-hmm. Maybe talk to us about right now, like I'm going to fast forward a little bit.
Sure.
What's your business look like today? What would you say your business activities are on a daily basis?
Okay. So we run a couple different businesses and they're all mostly parallel to each other. My most active business is we wholesale nationwide. Our company is Nationwide Property Liquidators. And we've actually got a pretty big staff. We fluctuate anywhere between like 13 and 16, kind of 17 people, depending upon who's in, who's out at the time. So the wholesaling bit, that's where I probably spend the most amount of time because that's very active investing, right? And we started virtual wholesaling before there was all these courses to tell you how to do it. Right. And so we sort of had, again, we're like, well, let's wholesale nationwide, and we figured out all the things not to do. But so we've kind of got our company broken up into some different pieces. There's marketing for sellers, there's our acquisitions people, and then we have marketing for buyers. We have a full dispositions department. We treat dispositions just like acquisitions in our company. We're very aggressive and proactive. We've never been on the plan of I'm just going to put one sign in the yard and hope somebody drives by and calls me to buy this property. Mm-hmm. And then we have a full transactions department that kind of takes all that and bundles it together and gets the property through title and a closing to get a check. And because we do that on such a big scale, that draws in a lot of joint venture business. So we have investors all over the country who will bring us their deals, and that they're unable to sell, and we'll help them get it sold. So we do quite a bit of joint venture business, and that's like our wholesaling business. That's probably the thing, of the time that I do work, that's 90% of my time.
So let's just make sure, because you'll probably have some folks who reach out after this. You're in Birmingham, you're in Chattanooga.
We're in, let me see if I can kind of run through. I kind of got to do it in the map in my head. So we're actually in all 37 of the disclosure states, right? Okay. So that's where we're marketing. Okay. But we're doing deals in all the rest of them. Like Texas is a non-disclosure state, but we've always got people reaching out and saying, hey, I've got this deal in San Antonio or El Paso or Texas or Dallas or whatever it is. So right. We can operate pretty much any place. our outbound marketing that we do on our side, it's just easier to pull lists and do marketing in states where public information on the sale is readily available. And that's kind of a longer, deeper conversation. But
Right.
yeah, so we work in all the states. Our main markets, the markets that were kind of like our hubs that we all like, if anything happens, we can always retreat back to them. Huntsville, Chattanooga, Charlotte, Atlanta.
You were doing some stuff in Tampa at one point too, weren't you?
Yeah, we love Tampa. I used to live down there. That was one of the places I lived. I toured Florida when I lived in like 11 different cities down there. Tampa's beautiful. In fact, I'll be down there at the end of September looking at some deals.
Yeah, so national wholesaler, virtual wholesaling, even if that's not the name of it.
Everybody's got their own unique name. They want to put a spin on it, but yeah, we're just wholesaling out of the markets. That's all.
Okay, so you and your wife, you all start doing this. You pick up some wholesaling. Then you got into rental property, right?
We did. It's kind of funny, John. So we came here wanting to buy rental properties, and then we realized, oh, you have to get these loans and you have to do all this stuff. And I'm like, well, that's kind of a problem, and because how much of that can you do? So, I mean, that was our initial plan, but again, we're doing so much marketing, right? I tell people, like, we took this huge net and we threw it out and we drug all these different deals in. So what happened is we started getting like deals that were like, hey, this would be really good for me. Like, I'd really like this deal. But we knew bank financing for us at the time, we just couldn't get it. My credit wasn't where it needed to be. Sadly, I had a house foreclosed on. Kind of like everybody else, right? At the time during the crisis, like, things were bad. And again, go back in time, it's the recession, right? Banks aren't lending money like they were a few years before. And it's still not that like loosey-goosey, but there wasn't the hard money lenders like, there's a hard money lender on every corner now, and these nationwide guys like Longhorn. And so it's very easy relatively to get money compared to how it was then. So I had taken this course a couple of years before, a guy named Chris Kirshner. He's not even in real estate anymore, but he had this amazing course, and he taught you how to do owner financing, kind of like the old Carlton Sheets thing.
Yeah.
So I'm like, well, let's try this, right? Like, here's, I made this person a cash offer. They wouldn't accept it. And I said, well, listen, hey, do you need all the cash now? Right. And sometimes the answer was yes, sometimes the answer was no. But every time we started asking. And what happened over the course of the next 3 or 4 years is we accumulated this rental portfolio. I think at our height, we had almost 80 properties, 78 or 80 properties. And every single one of them we bought with owner financing with almost no money down. I think my portfolio now is somewhere around 4 million, and I've got $6,000 in down payment money. So, I mean, it's just an enormous portfolio, and we did it all through owner financing. So, there's more than one way to attack real estate. And depending upon what your situation is, some people are frustrated, like, oh, I have bad credit. Well, you don't need great credit to have a seller who has a free and clear property to owner finance it to you. You don't, there's just always a way, right? And you just got to have that mentality of, how am I going to get this done? So yeah, the short story, we used owner financing and some taking over mortgages and some of that stuff. We got a little bit creative, and we built this amazing portfolio that, cash flows for us, and it's going to pay us forever.
Now, were those properties all in Chattanooga, or did you?
Yes. Yeah. So we didn't go virtual until about 3.5 years ago. So this was all stuff that we were buying in 2009, 10, 11, 12.
Mm-hmm.
Probably the last pack, we bought a package in 2016 that was pretty big. And then once we flipped over to having a big staff and doing wholesaling, and of course the market was going crazy, so we pulled back on that a little bit. But we're about to hire 2 people to just put them on purchasing properties that way nationwide with owner financing. So it's a strategy that we're gonna refocus on here pretty soon.
It's one of my favorite ways to buy property. It's one of those ways where you can really get started with very little of your own money.
Yeah.
Especially if you can focus on finding a problem, helping a seller solve a problem, and kind of doing some education to explain to them why it might be a better solution for them than just getting a lump sum check.
Absolutely.
A lot of sellers have kind of gotten hip to it now. I'm seeing a lot more people make offers that include seller financing. So when I talk to them, a lot of the sellers know what it is already.
Oh yeah.
And that's helping because, it might not have gotten offered by a good operator before or somebody with experience. And so you're not having to kind of start from zero.
Yeah.
But I've done a similar thing, building a portfolio with a mix of bank money and seller finance loans and all of that. And so I know what it takes to run a large portfolio like this. Just kind of joking about getting it stabilized and that sort of thing. When you were scaling up, like, what did your team look like in managing a portfolio that size?
Pretty small. Myself and my wife, and my brother when he was part of our company. So that was it. It was the three of us. So when we started buying these rentals, and I recommend this for really for everybody. Like, I went and changed the toilets. I cut the grass. The three of us. It was the three of us. This was it, right? We didn't have, again, no money. We just had a lot of time. So we went and turned the units. We did the painting. If we had to swap out a vanity or a water heater, fix the front rail or fix the front steps or crawl underneath the house to do something, like we did probably all, other than like running a sewer line, where we might hire a plumber or hire in for air conditioning, like we had no money. So, we did it all. And my brother and I, of course, we grew up doing a lot of this type of stuff. So, so that was our team. And we very quickly realized we didn't want to be running around picking up rent from people. So, we had an office. So we switched everybody over. Hey, rent is due on the 1st, late on the 5th, and it gets delivered to the office. We put a little mail slot in and flip them over to that. So you used the perfect word, stabilizing, right? So every property that came in, that was our goal before we, raised the rent. We kind of stabilized them, made sure that we weren't on the everyday doing repairs kind of thing from them. We got the rent coming in continuously and, just stabilized. I don't know what other word to call it. And then over time, as we grew these properties and somebody moved out, well, that was when we went in and did a rehab, fresh carpet if we needed to, fresh paint. So even if a property was in a terrible area, I always tell people, like, I would live there, right? It was clean, had good paint, the carpet, it was either new or, we had it professionally clean. The toilets worked, the electrical worked, it was a nice, clean, safe property. Now outside, I may not have left my dog outside all day.
Right.
I left the property, but we always tried to provide good, affordable housing for people. So the team was small. The first thing I hired was somebody to cut the grass because I got tired of doing that. As we got to 15, 20 properties, it felt like every other week, John, all I did was cut grass. And so that was probably the first person that we hired. And then from there, I had like a part-time office girl who would collect rent and key some stuff into QuickBooks. But that was it. Like, we went all the way to 70 something properties with just that.
Yeah. And that's a good lean way to get started. I remember probably 4 years ago asking my mentor, Mike Alford, hey, when do I hire help? And I was working a full-time job and I had gotten to like 30 properties. Mm-hmm. And I now realize that that's when I needed help. My wife works full-time and she doesn't want anything to do with rentals. And
my wife, I don't let her talk to tenants. One time we were at a property and her and this tenant started screaming at each other. I grabbed her by the back of the shirt. I'm like, well, you're out of here. You're done.
Anything to do with them. And so I was asking, hey, when do I hire help? And now I realized I needed help when I started asking. Right. So, you definitely start to feel when you need to maybe start with some part-time assistance. Yeah. And when I hired my first employee and basically told her, I do not want to talk to tenants. I do not want to handle anything with a tenant. That's when I was able to go out and just really start buying like crazy.
Dude, I'm sitting here and I'm getting a text from one of my tenants and they still have my number, even though I've got an office manager. So
same thing here. And it's like you want to help them. But I'm like, now I've got it to where I've got to be focused on those high level tasks and got to contact the office. That's why they're there. So That's pretty cool. Okay, so this is a question. You've got a great wholesaling business.
Yeah.
You start picking up some rentals. Okay.
Mhm.
When do you really start to feel like you're moving the needle in a real estate business, and what does that feel like? Like when you really realize, because I mean, I've got a bunch of properties. I would probably say I still don't feel like, like
Yeah.
this mogul or this person that, I just feel like my
Yeah.
same old self. I still call the same friends. I still
Yeah.
do dinner Friday night, movie nights with the kids. It's
Yeah.
just,
Yeah.
when do you start feeling like you've accomplished what it is you wanted to accomplish?
I don't know, man. I'm not the guy to ask. Like when you figure it out, tell me. Yeah, dude. I mean, I don't know, dude. I wear $40 New Balances and jeans from Kmart. I don't know. I don't know when you arrive.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know.
Was
I
there,
guess when you have the money to do some of the things that you've wanted to do, right? So for us in the beginning, the best analogy I ever can give people is like, think of going to the top of this really big hill with grass and getting one of those old red like wagons, with like the handle on the front. And kind of in
yeah,
the beginning for us, I was like the fat kid in the wagon just going down the hill with arms out and legs out. We're just buying houses, we're flipping houses, we're cashing checks, just all this stuff
radio
is going on.
flyer. Yeah.
Radio flyer, that's it. I couldn't pull it out of my head.
Yeah.
Just be like no breaks. We're just doing it, right? We're just doing stuff. We're wholesaling, we're making money, we're buying properties. And then you get to the bottom of the hill after like 2 or 3 years, and you're like, oh my God, like I've got a real business I've created.
Yeah.
Like, how did that happen? Like I have like attorneys now that I'm dealing with, and title companies and accountants, and like I had to get my act together. So we probably went 4 or 5 years before we really like cleaned up all of our business stuff, right? And started doing our taxes correctly and all those types of things. But to kind of answer your question, the way that I structured it for me, because I'm a little bit older than you, so and because I was doing owner financing, I could set the terms of whatever I wanted. So all of my properties have a very accelerated amortization, right? So what that means is, because I started at 40, really being serious about buying stuff, I never put anything out more than 20 years because my thought process was, hey, at some point I want to retire, right? At some point I want to be done. And when I was buying these properties, I was okay. So I didn't ever buy my rentals to live off of the cash flow. That was never the intention for me, right? So I wasn't putting them on these 30 and 35, 40-year terms. I was putting them on 10, 5, 7, 14, 20 year amortization so that I could get them all paid off as quickly as possible. So I was perfectly okay with $150 a door for cash flow, right? I did very caveman math. What's my mortgage going to be? What's my interest? What's my insurance? Subtract those things from the current rental amount. Do I have 150, maybe $200 a door? Fantastic, right? Because I want to pay it down fast.
Yeah.
So the way I set it up was, from those rentals, what cash flow was there, that's what paid for my house and my office and my cell phone and like my health insurance, right? So my rentals supported my life, like, the very stripped down version of my life. So my thought was like, listen, I can just, from my rentals, sit at home in my underwear and watch Oprah all day, right? I mean, I'm not going any place. I'm not doing any trips or anything, but that's how my rentals were set up. And then my wholesale business was what we used to fund our life, right? So that's how we traveled the world, and we'd go to Europe for 30 days or go to South America for 30 days or China for 3 weeks or whatever it was. And that's kind of the thought process that we always had. My wife would say, hey, I want to do X, Y, and Z. I'm like, okay, great. Well, that's just one more deal. Like, just go do a deal, right? One extra deal. That's all it is. So if we're doing 6 this month or 8 this month, and you want to go take a cruise for 14 days, and it's going to be $5,000, great. We just got to do one more deal. Go out and do some more driving. Find me one more deal. And that's I think a different way that entrepreneurs have a mindset of, well, just whatever you want to do is just one more of whatever, right? One more of whatever you're doing, right? It's not necessarily, oh, well, let me save $50 a week extra. Well, let me just go do one more deal. Right. So
that's exactly how I think about it. A lot of times I think about it like, okay, I want this truck, or I want this vacation. let me go figure out how to get a tenant to pay for it. Let me go figure out
absolutely,
how
100%.
to get an asset to pay for it. And
Yeah.
it's powerful,
It is.
owning real estate. It's powerful having options, right? So, we're kind of getting to where I wanted to be here. Like, how would you say real estate benefited your life? How has it changed your life versus, what it would have been otherwise?
It's freedom, man. I mean, if you had to give one word, and it's crazy too, because as entrepreneurs, we probably work harder for ourselves than we ever worked for anybody else. But I have freedom and flexibility that, if I want, at the time when I ran a very small shop, and I was doing a little bit of wholesaling, I could turn my wholesaling off, leave, and we've done this multiple times, leave for 30 days. I knew when I was coming back, I would crank up my marketing about a week before we'd come, I prepay it to start. And that way, the day I landed, I've got leads, right? So it's just freedom. It's just allowed us. One thing my wife and I were really passionate about is traveling and seeing other places and cultures and people. And we've been lucky enough to go like from Dubai to China to all around South America and Europe a bunch of times. So it's given us that ability to go and do the things we wanted to do. I've got a grandson now because I'm getting old, and we have the ability to, we can stop on any day and shoot up to Ohio to go see them, or I've got the money to fly them to us, right? So it's just allowed us to create the life that we want. And, that's what this business does for us, is it serves the life that we want to lead, whatever. And anybody can do that, right? Like whatever your, the life that you envision for yourself, you can build your real estate business around that. Now, saying that, it can't be 90% travel and 10% work.
Absolutely.
You still got to put in the work and do the time, because everything is a trade-off.
Yeah, I think that's a similar thing. My wife and I were driving back from New Orleans last night. We had a great,
just in New Orleans.
Yeah, just like a great weekend, July 4th in New Orleans, great Airbnb with a private pool, and the kids really enjoyed themselves. Her dad was he lives in New Orleans. He was able to come over and stay for a few nights in this luxurious, hotel. And we're just thinking to each other, when we got married 15 years ago, the first house we bought was like a real shack of a place. And we're just did you ever think that we were going to be doing this? And we didn't. We never thought that would be a lifestyle that we'd be able to participate in. But you're right. There's work that has to come before that. And that's, you talked about how you started doing a lot of the work yourself, how you started putting sweat equity in and time in, really building a foundation before you started doing all of that, that extra stuff. And that can't be skipped, right? That work, that grind, especially that first 3, 4, 5 years, is hard sometimes. Yeah. But you see the result at the end. And when I was kind of building up, that's the stuff I still ask guys like you, is it worth it? Is it worth it?
Yeah. I mean, John, look at anything, who you're like a football team, right? They have not spring training or whatever. God, and I'm a football fan. I can't think of this, training camp, right? So they've got to do the work, right? They've got to get in the gym. They've got to pump the iron. They've got to do the drills. They've got to do the stuff. Spring training for baseball. That pitcher's going to go out there and throw 10,000 pitches. You've got to put in the time. The only way around that is buying it. And holy smokes, you have no idea what you're doing, and you're just going to spend money. You're going to learn just the same lessons, but it's going to cost you a fortune, right? Yeah. So I recommend go change a water heater, go change a toilet, because what that does, and maybe I didn't explain it before, is later down the road when you do hire people and someone's like, yeah, it's $450 to replace a toilet. I'm like, dude, it's $95 for all-in-one toilet kit at Lowe's. It comes with everything. It comes with the wax ring, the tank, the bowl, and the supply line, and $100 to put it in. $200. How are you coming up with $450? Right? So just by going through that little season where you do the work yourself, it gives you a sense of what things should cost. Right? I had somebody quote me $19,000 to paint a big house that we're just getting ready to start remodeling. I'm like, dude, you're on crack. There's no way it's $19,000 for 2 weeks work, right? So, but if I hadn't done that and rolled the walls and cut it in and figured out how to do it, like that's how you get taken advantage of. So, go through that season and put in that work, and it'll save you money and help you in the long run.
Hey, look, you've definitely blessed our audience this morning. I think that anybody listening can get motivated by somebody who thinks like you. They start really from, no money and build a portfolio, build a business. How can people get in touch with you if they want to reach out to you further, maybe follow you on social media? I know you have a pretty active Facebook and Instagram, right?
I do. Well, yeah, I post a lot of stuff on there. Instagram's new for me. I'm like a 49-year-old guy. So the girls in my office love to make fun of me because I call it the Twitter. And I've just discovered TikTok, which I think is the greatest thing ever. But you can lose 5 hours of your life.
Yeah.
But no, the easiest way to find me, I have the same name, handle, whatever you call it, across all the platforms. It's David Olds, REI, with no spaces. And I'd love follow me on Instagram. That's probably the easiest place to find me. And shoot me a message. I'm happy to interact and help with anybody in any way that I can. I love doing that. I love helping new investors and trying to point them in the right direction. Because I remember that day when I was afraid to stop at the RIA and go in there. And when I finally did, the people, they were so helpful. And I definitely remember those days and being the scared guy walking into an event, because I'm still that guy. I still walk in and wonder, oh my God, why am I here? Why did I get invited?
Yeah, David Olds, REI.
Yeah.
On Instagram is really a great way to reach you. I'm out there as well at Grab the Map. And everybody knows I answer every single email that goes to grabthemap@gmail.com. Awesome. David Olds, this has truly been a blessing for me. This podcast is just kind of going to give me some juice to keep going and give me some juice to keep helping people. And it's good to see that you're willing to do the same. Just any closing thought that you'd like to share with the audience before we wrap up here?
And so 2 things. There's just no substitute for hard work. There's really not. You have to get in and put the time in. Sort of the last thing that I've come to realize the last few years, and what's amazing is I learned this by going out and putting myself out there, being at events around the country. Being an entrepreneur is really lonely, right? You can feel like a man on an island. You get up in the morning, you're doing whatever it is that you're doing, whether it's wholesaling or trying to buy rentals, and you feel like you're out there by yourself. So I tell people, like, find a tribe, right? Find a small tribe. Like, it doesn't have to be 100 people, but find yourself 3 or 4 friends, allies that you can bounce information off of, ask them questions, share the good stuff, share the bad stuff, and kind of be there for each other. And get in this journey and do it together. So maybe if it's not, doesn't have to be people from around the country. It can be a couple people in your market, but just some people that you really connect with and resonate with, and you have shared values. And man, I'm telling you, like, I've been through some stuff in my company in the last couple months where we've done a bunch of upheaval and changed a bunch of people out, and having those guys that I can call and say, hey man, what do you think about this? Here's what I'm thinking about, or what are you doing? What can I help you with? And just, you have that commonality, and there's no substitute from that. And that's really invaluable.
Yeah. That's something that is really important, having that connection to people that are like-minded, and that real nucleus where you can really bear all,
Yeah. Be honest with people, because everybody wants to think, look, because I'm here and you invited me and I'm so thankful to be on here, but I'm like a regular, like, we have a company, right? I have people that work for me. So there's stuff, like, there are issues. People have problems. Sometimes you have to let people go. Today, in 2 hours, I'm starting a new person. I'm going to be doing some training. So, like, that's the real stuff behind this business. Don't get on Instagram and think, people are, it's all perfect because they've got a Rolex and a flashy car. I've got a nice car and a Rolex too, man. I'm telling you, like, life goes on and we all have struggles that we have to work through. So don't think that anybody's better than you.
That's great advice. Hey, look, David, I appreciate you so much for doing this.
Yeah, man, I love it. It was great.
Really been beneficial. If you want to reach out to David, don't forget about his Instagram, David Olds, REI. And don't forget, you can always reach out to us in the Wealth and Real Estate Facebook group or at Grab the Map. Hey, Don't just look at it, grab the map.